Good morning, everybody. I'm Doug Jenkins with the Findlay-Hancock County Chamber of Commerce, and welcome to our latest virtual small business workshop. Today, we're talking about your role as an ERISA plan fiduciary and working on that 401k plan in the office, more in layman's terms. I'm joined from Resolute Wealth Advisor by Scott Homan, Bo Bryant, and Aaron Zilka. We'll be talking a lot about this 401k planning process and what you should know as a business about that. Now, just some housekeeping measures before we get going. Once we start hearing the presentation, you may have some questions. If you want to put those in the chat window or the question window, go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and ask those questions to them after we get through the presentation. But if you have something that kind of pops into your head during the presentation, don't sit on it. Feel free to put it in the chat window right away so you don't forget about it. And we'll get to your question again during that Q&A session. Afterwards, if you have questions, of course, you can contact Bo, Scott, or Aaron. They may have some materials for you as well. I'll let them get to that, but I will turn it over to you guys to get started today. Thank you all for joining us.
Perfect. Thanks, Doug. Yeah, so hello, everyone. I'm Bo Bryant and with Resolute Wealth Advisors. I'm Associate Wealth Advisor here, and just our presentation on your role as an ERISA plan fiduciary. So throughout our discussion today, we'll be discussing the various roles and responsibilities of today's retirement plan fiduciaries and how you can take steps to confirm your retirement plan administration to the standards that are required by law today. We'll also explain the process that we use with our clients to help them complete the review of their fiduciary responsibilities and how that can translate into the overall success, not only of the plan, but of its participants as well. But first, I'd like to turn it over to Scott so he can provide an introduction to Resolute Wealth Advisor and give some background on how our company came to be. Scott?
Thanks, Bo. I can't tell right now, are the slides showing on our screen? On the webinar?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't see.
Okay. For those of you who are not familiar with Resolute Wealth Advisor, we're a wealth management firm, and we are a registered investment advisor in Findlay. The name has only been around since 2018, but members of our team, including me, have been around since 1992, serving clients here in the local area. The company Resolute was formed for three primary reasons. One, a desire to build a team approach to serving our clients, to make sure that we more fully integrate technology, not only into the client side of things, but also in our back office functions, and to deliver our services in a fiduciary manner. We have two primary focuses with our business: individual wealth management for successful individuals and families, and serving as the investment advisor on qualified retirement plans here in the local area. These are two very different service models. You're going to hear from Bo and Aaron today because they really manage and run the qualified service or the qualified plan side of the business. And you're going to hear the word fiduciary a lot today. We found that, or realized a while ago, we are fiduciaries to our plan clients. Ultimately, our plan decision makers are fiduciary to their plans too, and to their participants, their employees. So ultimately, we're all kind of sitting on the same side of the table. We've got to be fiduciaries to the employees. You have to be fiduciaries to the employees. So by working together, we're all kind of making sure that we're taking care of the things that we need to, and that's how we try to assist our clients. I think that we've had such a wealth management focus historically, has really worked well in the participant work that we do and trying to help those participants, guide them through the tools that are available, help them with those decisions that are really can be challenging for someone who's never been around 401k. So I'll end it there. I'll turn it over to Aaron. She'll provide an introduction and we'll begin the presentation.
All right, thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. And so for those of you who don't know me, I am an advisor, currently the senior wealth advisor here with Resolute. I've been working as an advisor, though, servicing clients since 2009, and actually began working alongside Scott as part of the team back in 2012. Typically, I do focus more on the individual wealth management for clients of Resolute, but I also work very closely with Bo on the retirement plan side of things and meeting with the key decision makers for the retirement plans that we service. I help to lead the fiduciary review meetings, which you're going to hear a lot about today during our presentation. During these meetings, we cover the primary topics that we want to make sure the plan decision makers we're working with are informed of, and then documenting and monitoring the review process for the retirement plans along the way. It is very important to us that the retirement plans that we service stay very well informed of the internal details of their plans, and what the participants are being offered, what the employees are being offered in terms of services, as well as making sure that they're really staying on top of any higher level changes that are coming down from the DOL or other regulatory bodies in charge. So I'm going to turn it over to Bo, and we can go ahead and get started, lead into the presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, Erin. Yeah, so, and I've been here with Resolute for just over 2 years now, and as Erin said, one of my main responsibilities is working to assist the companies that we work with and, facilitating the reviews of the retirement plan, meeting with the participants, to establish their individual accounts, and then kind of serve as that intermediary between the plan custodian and the administrators of the plan. So, yeah, we'll go ahead and get started here with our presentation. Doug, you can feel free to switch to the next slide there. Perfect. So, yeah, so you may have noticed over the last few years that there's been an increase in the litigation cases being brought against retirement plan fiduciaries. No two plans are typically the same in terms of how they are created, structured, maintained, but you can see on this chart what the leading causes of ERISA plan litigation, has been from 2006 to 2017. What is interesting, about this chart is that there's less of a focus today on inappropriate investment decisions. If you look through 2008, 2009, you can see that was the primary reason for litigation being brought against these plans. But that's shifted today more towards excessive fees, self-dealing, all things that you as the fiduciary need to be, mindful of as you're administering the plan. So the Department of Labor expects employers to administer their plans for the sole benefit of the workers, and both the company and its fiduciaries can be held responsible if these standards are not followed. Court rulings in these cases often hinge on the plan's fiduciary or fiduciaries using prudent decision-making process rather than relying on, the specific outcomes for the individual participants. So having the ability to show that there is a documented process for reviewing the plan can be beneficial in those circumstances. So, and then based on a study performed by Vanguard in 2017, it was shown that the retirement plan participation rates have increased 10% over the last decade, and deferral rates have also increased. The national average being reported is 8.3%, which is the highest over the last 10 years. So what this means for you as the plan fiduciary is that more of your employees are deferring a higher percentage of their income into the retirement plan, and the Department of Labor expects that these plans will be held to specific standards. So, how can you, as your company's retirement plan fiduciary, take action today to ensure that you're compliant with the standards set by the Department of Labor?
Well, that is a great question. So as Bill mentioned, this chart really does point to why, first of all, a comprehensive fiduciary review process is so important to have in place as a key decision maker for the retirement plan. So first thing I do want to cover, we want to make sure we touch on, we're going to take a slight step back. We keep using this word fiduciary, but let's start kind of from square one and talk about exactly who is considered a fiduciary of an ERISA retirement plan. So the Department of Labor defines a planned fiduciary as an individual or an entity with discretionary authority over a 401k's administration or investment choices. So it's important to note that employers do actually risk personal liability when these fiduciary standards, the ones that we're going to be talking about today throughout the presentation, they do risk personal liability if these standards are not being met. And while the consequences of not meeting those standards can be quite severe, avoiding the consequences is really not a difficult task as long as you have a good solid process in place and you're making sure that you have the proper documentation and preparation along with guidance from some knowledgeable professionals along the way. These are all areas that we help our retirement plan clients manage in order to make sure that they're limiting their fiduciary liability and risks. So when it comes to actually being a fiduciary of the plan, there are 5 key duties of an ERISA plan fiduciary. So if you are considered one of these fiduciaries, one of these key decision makers for the plans, these are the 5 duties that you have to your employees, to your plan participants as a plan administrator, as a plan sponsor. So the first is the duty of loyalty. Duty of loyalty says that ERISA fiduciaries must act solely in the interest of the plan participants and plan beneficiaries, with the exclusive purpose of providing benefits to the participants while only paying reasonable plan expenses in doing so. The second refers to, when we say documentation here, what we're really referring to is the benefit plan document. You may have heard that term before. It's an important document that governs how the plan operates. So the importance of acting in accordance with the terms of this document, the plan document really defines the specifics of the retirement plan itself, and then states what benefits are available, who's eligible to participate, how those benefits are going to be funded, and who's named as a fiduciary of the plan, and so much more. So it's very reasonable to expect that these key plan decision makers should be well versed in how the terms of this document operate and are set forth and how they're going to be followed. The next is a duty to act prudently. So this specifically just states that plan fiduciaries must act with care, skill, prudence, and diligence under the same circumstances that you would expect from any ethical expert in the field. Simply doing your best, unfortunately, is not enough by DOL standards anymore, but this really creates a very compelling reason as to why it's so important to be well educated on these responsibilities and how they're being fulfilled as the decision maker for your retirement plan. The next duty, diversification, refers to the diversification of the underlying investment options that are being provided and offered to the plan participants. As with any investment vehicle, diversification is a very important area to be monitoring. This helps to minimize risk of large losses, large investment losses to the plan, and fiduciaries should consider each plan investment, each underlying fund option as part of the plan's entire portfolio. And you're going to want to document the evaluation process, how the investment decisions are being made. This could actually involve reviewing the plan's investment options then to ensure that there's a diverse selection available to participants covering many sectors of the broad financial markets, and making sure that you're providing options for participants with varying levels of risk tolerance, investment objectives, financial goals, and time horizons. The final duty then of an ERISA plan fiduciary is to make sure that you are reviewing the plan's aggregate expenses to make sure that they're reasonable for the services that are being offered and provided to plan participants, especially when comparing them to similar plans. And when we say similar plans, we're saying typically this is earmarked or determined by level of plan assets and the number of participants that are active in the plan. So it's important to be benchmarking and then documenting this comparison review process.
Yeah. So to go along with these, objectives as the fiduciary, there's 6 objectives that, that are considered responsibilities with your retirement plan. First, as Aaron already kind of discussed with the diversification topic, is making sure that you're selecting prudent investment options as part of the fund lineup that's available to the participants, to help ensure that the needs of the employees are being placed ahead of the plan administrators, or kind of relating back to that self-dealing topic. Also, you have to satisfy your administration responsibilities. That includes, the plan testing that I'm sure anybody who's been involved with that is well aware of, disclosure and delivery requirements, determination of the eligibility of the participants. Those are other areas that are high priority with that. So the plan testing for any retirement plan can be an involved process, and reviewing this information to confirm your plan's compliance with ERISA law is essential and required, for maintaining your company's retirement plan. So third option there, determining and benchmarking the retirement plan's fees to other similar plans, that helps to provide the necessary oversight of the plan and verify, that only reasonable and necessary fees have been paid by the plan assets. The timing of deposits is actually, a pretty important part of it as well. So as you can see here, the deposit, the contribution in the employee's account must be within 15 days from the date the contributions were withheld from the employee's paycheck. In today's growing world of technology, this process is becoming, much simpler, in terms of getting that information over to the plan custodian, but you want to make sure that it's done within this 15-day period. It's also important to verify that your company's retirement plan has a sufficient level of coverage provided by an ERISA fidelity bond, which is just, essentially a form of insurance against illegal acts committed by those who serve as fiduciaries to the retirement plan. The appropriate level of coverage of the ERISA bond that, has to be provided as determined by the Department of Labor must be the lesser of 10% of your plan's assets or $500,000. It's worth noting that losses associated with investment decisions are not covered by this bond, but, rather plans, losses due to fraud, dishonesty, such as theft, that would be covered under the ERISA fidelity bond. And then lastly, they're making a conscious effort to identify and review the various plan service providers available, and then making an informed decision based off the research that you've done. That'll help to illustrate your due diligence in selecting the service provider for your company's retirement plan. Obviously, it's one of the largest decisions that you make as the plan is being established, but continual monitoring of this process helps to ensure that your current level of service provided to your participants is in line, with the expenses being paid, and that there's not a better alternative out there. So just showing the fact that you're still maintaining some oversight as to what's available versus what you have, and making a decision from there. So you may be wondering, these are a lot of responsibilities. How am I supposed to monitor and stay on top of all the changing rules and regulations of being a fiduciary? And we'll let Erin tell you about all that.
Again, great question, Bill. So they definitely sound like a lot of responsibilities.
All of them.
So to help with kind of narrowing this down for you, what we've done is we've actually listed some of the key items that you should probably make sure that you're really monitoring. These are the areas that you really want to focus on as a decision maker for a retirement plan, as a fiduciary of a retirement plan today. So initially, you really want to make sure you're confirming the aggregate investment allocation of the total plan assets. Usually this is generated through a report that specifically illustrates the blend of equities or stocks investments to the bond and fixed income side of investments within the plan. This really helps to confirm the overall allocation of the plan itself, but it also helps to show the level of diversification of the plan assets across the plan participants, and making sure that that diversification is appropriate based on your plan's demographics specifically. You want to make sure that that looks appropriate based on who's actually investing in these within your plan at this particular moment. The second thing then is making sure you are monitoring the performance, the mutual fund performance of each investment option available to the plan participants. While performance is an important characteristic, this is not the only characteristic of a fund option that needs to be considered when you're reviewing. So this includes reviewing the fund's expense ratio, historical performance along with how it ranks among its peers, and even how the fund's assets are being managed internally. These are all very important pieces to be considering when you're reviewing your investment options. And this is where a professional advisor can really help you key in on those specific details and make sure you're understanding those fund options. Additionally, you're going to need to discuss and make note along with the other plan decision makers of any investment options that maybe are not performing consistently or they've been underperforming for a period of time. And as the plan decision maker, you have the ability to elect to exchange one fund for another, either removing, replacing, exchanging an underperforming fund from the fund lineup available to participants, and then replacing it with one that's more appropriate. Tracking participation and contribution rates. This is a very important indicator of the overall health of and success of the plan and the participants themselves. So usually there can be very concise reports that give you this detailed information as far as who's participating, what the deferral rates are, and oftentimes we've actually found that these rates can be improved over time and the deferral rates can be increased with more participant education and information. So we've worked very diligently in recent years to make sure that our plan participants are receiving the education that they need to make sure that they're very well informed and understanding the responsibility that lies with them in making sure that they're funding their own retirement assets as well. It's been something that, we here at Resolute, Bo and Scott and I have worked very hard to make sure that those participants have a very good understanding. And we've seen those deferral rates just increase over time. And that is a very important indicator to be watching as a plan decision maker. The next then is, you're going to hear us talk about this quite a bit as well, making sure that you're determining and understanding the fee and expenses associated with your retirement plan, but then also benchmarking that against other companies with similar, like we said, similar asset levels and number of plan participants. So confirming that the fees that are being paid out of the plan are reasonable and in line with the services that the participants or employees are receiving from the plan. There are services available that actually provide information on plans similar to yours. You can get information regarding their fees and expenses, and that helps you a little bit more easily compare where your plan falls in line, and then you can document this as part of your annual review process. The last piece or key area that you want to make sure that you're focusing on, and you're going to hear this term quite a bit as well, is making sure that you are creating and maintaining your investment policy statement. This investment policy statement is going to be what helps to set the guidelines for how your plan is meant to be serviced. It also details the level of oversight that's going to be provided, how investment options are being selected, and the monitoring process for reviewing investment options going forward. So a very important thing to note here is that the only thing worse than not having an investment policy statement is actually having one and not following it. So some of the areas of litigation that Bo touched on earlier, there is a significant potential for litigation against retirement plan decision makers who have not followed their investment policy statement, and then reviewing your plan's investment policy statement periodically as you're going through that fiduciary review meeting process is also a very important part of the compliance process. Bo, you want to take over for
absolutely. So yeah. So we've discussed some of the roles and responsibilities of today's retirement plan fiduciary. It's beneficial to identify specific questions that you can consider when determining if your company's plan is structured in a fiduciary manner. So on the next slide is a list of questions that the Department of Labor kind of puts together just to give you a gauge on where you're at. So, documenting your company's hiring process, identifying those who have the fiduciary responsibility to the plan, confirming that you have provided necessary plan and investment related information to your participants. These are all important elements to consider when determining the strengths and maybe identifying some potential weaknesses of your existing process. So Erin, we'll go ahead and turn it back over to you.
Thanks. So we keep kind of referring to the actual fiduciary review process. So let's take some time and focus on what that actually means. So one of the most important aspects of being a plan decision maker is completing this review process. So during the actual meeting process, really it's just an opportunity for the key decision makers of the plan to meet, usually at least once a year, sometimes more frequently than that even, but it should be at least once a year. Sit down, have discussions, analyze the various components that make up the company's retirement plan. Those results of that meeting can then be compared to the standards set forth by the Department of Labor, so that the plan and the fiduciaries of the plan can actually evaluate themselves and evaluate the plan and their offering for employees. So throughout this review process, the investment lineup, performance of investments, fees and expenses paid by the company and its employees, and the overall employee participation in the plan are very important elements that are going to factor into the total evaluation of your plan's compliance, not only with the Department of Labor standards, but also with ERISA law standards. So it's important to be continually benchmarking all of these elements to make sure that your plan remains reasonable. That's a very important term that we see over and over, but remains reasonable in all areas when compared to the peers. Lastly, we do always encourage, as you're going through this review process, and even as you're beginning and setting up an investment or a retirement plan for your business, for your employees, we always recommend working with an ERISA attorney to develop and maintain your company's investment policy statement. There it is again, investment policy statement, as well as ensuring that you're reviewing this investment policy statement document during each fiduciary review meeting. This just helps to show the Department of Labor or any other auditor that the guidelines set forth by the investment policy statement are being followed. They're being followed with care and prudence for the plan's participants. And it's something that you're continually using to kind of help govern the decisions of the investment selection process. So while this is not a comprehensive list, we want everybody to keep in mind of all the components important in a fiduciary review. This list that we'll dive into here are going to highlight some of the areas where an in-depth analysis can really be beneficial for you as a decision maker. So the first report, or the first piece of a fiduciary review process that we're going to touch on is what's called a monitoring report. So often you're going to see a monitoring report involved in any type of plan review process. What this report does is it provides specific and very granular detail of the investment options available to the plan participants. And while this level of detail can sometimes be a little intimidating to some or very dry to others, it's still very relevant to your role as a plan decision maker and an important part of something you need to be aware of. So within the monitoring process, there should be a process, a very specific strategy for evaluating the performance of each investment option and comparing it to its peers and the applicable benchmark. Also included in the monitoring process should be a list of any of the funds that are maybe scoring poorly for when comparing it to its peers. Any funds that should be monitored going forward and potentially be kind of earmarked for possible recommendation to be replaced at some point in the future if the scoring does not improve. So this monitoring process really helps highlight not only the individual funds and track, the performance over time and any changes that you're going to be making to the investment selection to help improve those options for the employees and the participants, but it also usually highlights the aggregate blend of the plan's assets. So it shows how many are being invested, how many participants are investing in stocks and how many are investing in bonds, and what that level of diversification is, how those funds and investments are being utilized specifically by the employees. The next report moves into plan executive summary, and I'm going to let Bo take that one. He works a lot on this area specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, so some providers out there offer this retirement plan executive summary, and what it is that 10,000-foot view of your company's retirement plan. It tracks your contribution rates, your participation rates, talks about the average account balance, and allows you to kind of track all this over a period of time, so it helps you to identify trends in both the good areas and maybe areas where some additional focus might be necessary, just to encourage participation or, increasing contributions, just providing that extra level of guidance to the participants, can all come from just reviewing this document that some providers have available out there today as well. So, we've talked about the fee and expense report as well, and that's kind of the next section here. And that, it's just going to summarize the various costs associated with administering the retirement plan each year. Doug, we can switch to the next slide there. Sorry about that. These fees can be paid to the fund managers of the investment options, included in the lineup. Fees paid to the custodian for annual compliance testing services, and also any fees that are paid to an advisor who works to assist the fiduciaries with maintaining an investment selection that is within the terms of the investment policy statement for the plan. The fees that your plan is paid, are then benchmarked against similar companies. We've discussed that a number of times, but and it's not always expected that your company's plan is always going to be the cheapest compared to its benchmarks, but it is expected that this information is at least reviewed. If you're able to identify a more cost-effective alternative that provides, a higher net benefit to everybody, then, working to help achieve that as well. So it's just continuing to stay on top of the fees. That first chart showed where that's where the increasing number of litigation cases are coming from. So staying mindful of what your plan is costing, the company and the participants itself, one of the higher priorities in today's world. So we'll let Aaron, as we've said, we've talked about the investment policy statement a number of times. We'll have Aaron kind of finalize that discussion.
Thank you. So as we've said a couple of times, this is an important document that you want to make sure that you're reviewing as part of the overall meeting fiduciary review process as the plan decision makers are getting together and reviewing the information. I know we keep bringing this up, but it is very important, so we're continuing to kind of just feed that information as well. It's been the investment policy statement, it actually defines how compliance is going to be maintained for the governing of the plan in a way, specific to the investments, the underlying investments themselves. So it really outlines the general investment rules followed within the retirement plan and investment selection, and then the offering process. So as mentioned before, we do always just recommend that you reach out to an ERISA attorney. There are attorneys that specialize specifically in ERISA law, and so they can help really establish the investment policy statement for you, but then also help to make any amendments to that investment policy statement as things change over time, because you may make changes to how you want your fund offering to look for your plan participants as things change over time. There are sample investment policy statements that you can get online. You can obtain those, just generic investment policy statements, but we do typically recommend that you have a customized investment policy statement that really speaks to the specific needs and goals of your individual retirement plan. So this is where it really can be beneficial to include that attorney that's well versed in ERISA law to help you establish that. And then it really just helps to make sure that the Department of Labor understands you are reviewing this, you're making sure that you're considering your fiduciary responsibilities in terms of the investment offering, and the policy, you have a specific policy in place that you are following, and you can document that with each meeting as you go through this process. Let's see here. Working with qualified plan and administrators. Bo, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I can move on to the next topic. So, we've kind of discussed the process between, or, the roles and responsibilities of, giving you an idea of how that process kind of works, and maybe showcase a little bit of how we integrate ourselves into this process. So when working with our qualified plans and the administrators of those plans, we help to produce the monitoring reports, performing our due diligence and reviewing the performance of each investment option in the plan, comparing those returns to the benchmarks and peer groups based on the fund's investment objective, and then making those recommendations to the fiduciary committee of the plan for any funds, that should be removed, replaced, or added to the fund lineup to the participants. We also like to document pretty detailed reasoning behind making those suggestions. Anytime you're doing these changes, you want to make sure that there's a well-documented process where all decision makers are available or able to agree with those decisions before they can get made, and that helps solidify that due diligence that needs to be performed when you're making those types of changes. We also run the fee and benchmarking reports that we've talked about now for our plans, that list the investment fees, our fees, and the custodian fees, and then kind of take that all together and provide a total blended cost for your plan. That's what we use to benchmark against plans with similar asset levels and number of participants. Again, not focusing on whether or not your plan is the cheapest, but just making sure that those fees are in line with the services that are being provided to the participants and to the fiduciary or plan administrators as well. So, and then we'll provide an example of the investment policy statement. As Aaron mentioned, you can find these online and they're very generic. They say investment policy statement, but they're not customized in any way to your company or the needs, of your business. So we'll provide that sample to you then, and then also make that recommendation that you do seek out the guidance of an ERISA attorney who can, get that customized more to your plan specific needs. So, but the booklet that you see there is what we provide our plan fiduciaries, and this helps provide that documentation that your plan has been reviewed, and then we help provide some guidance to assist the plan decision makers in reviewing their company's retirement plan from a fiduciary's perspective. So, and over time, we provide a booklet during each meeting, so you have a well-documented over a course of period of time process for monitoring your company's retirement plan. So, on the next slide, you'll see us talk about the participant experience, and that is what has become a priority for many employers and plan decision makers. And we here at Resolute focus on working with those plan participants to help them with many aspects of the retirement plan. Me personally, I usually work with enrolling the new participants. Our company's created demonstration videos that help participants with the various self-service tools available. So how to go in and change your contribution rate, how to request a loan, a withdrawal, how to do a rollover. We have taken the time to go ahead and create those videos more specifically to the companies that we work with, as opposed to just a standard, demonstration video there. And then we meet individually with the participants to review their investments. We kind of like to be the first point of contact for any investment related questions, and that way we can sit down, kind of establish that relationship over time, especially with the more tenured employees, and be able to provide that guidance to help when questions come up. And that seems to be a good resource for the companies that we work with. So as we meet with the participants, we do have that conversation around their financial situation, try to find out what's most important to them in saving for retirement. And during this conversation, as a result of, we're able to help guide that participant towards selecting the appropriate deferral percentage and the investment portfolio. So on the next slide, you'll see that we also educate the participants on the various retirement planning tools that are available from the custodian's website. You see a lot more online access to your 401k, even on your mobile phones. To be able to log in at any point and see kind of where things are at, or even take care of those self-service items right directly from your cell phone. So it allows your participants to interact with the retirement account when it's most convenient to them, which seems to be growing in popularity for what people are looking for. So go ahead and turn it over to Aaron here for some final notes. Yeah.
Thanks, Bo. So as we kind of conclude our presentation this morning, it is important that there are a couple of things that we do touch on as far as some recent changes that have occurred within the private sector of the retirement system. So, going through the fiduciary review process, this is all very important information. You need to make sure you're doing that on a regular basis, at least once a year. But as we mentioned early on, making sure that you're staying informed of some of those higher level changes that are coming down is also an important part of your role as a plan decision maker, as a fiduciary of these retirement plans. So the first thing that we want to mention was the enactment of the Secure Act. This was actually introduced late in 2019 and provided for a number of changes to many aspects of the ERISA retirement plans. We do here have listed some of the key changes that came through with the Secure Act when it was implemented, but we want to bring special attention to the point on automatic enrollment and how that can have an impact on your company's retirement plan. So the U.S. Department of Labor states that including automatic enrollment as a feature of your company's retirement plan can help not only attract but also keep talented employees. It can help increase the plan participation, and it also helps employees to really begin saving for their future. As we've said, it's important to make sure employees are taking on this responsibility and understanding their role in obligation to making sure they're funding their retirement as well. So this feature can potentially be included in your existing retirement plan. We have included a link in this presentation to the Department of Labor's booklet on benefits and requirements of including automatic enrollment in your company's retirement plan. You're going to see that here in a separate slide coming up. But the second change that we want to mention, Doug, if you want to switch to the next, actually refers to the CARES Act. And you've probably heard a lot, if you are a key decision maker for your retirement plan, you've probably heard this term come up a lot recently. So the CARES Act was established earlier this year in response to challenges faced by employees during the COVID crisis. It's had significant impact on retirement plans. We've listed some of those changes in relation to the CARES Act here. But really just knowing in relation to participants' ability to take a loan or withdraw a certain amount from their retirement plans while avoiding the 10% early distribution penalty. Primarily what this act did is it allowed for easier access to retirement assets for employees, provided certain criteria are met both with the retirement plan itself and the participant's individual situation. And then not a whole lot required as far as documentation when those requests come through, but just making sure that you understand now some of those changes as far as what employees have access to and have available to them if they find themselves in a financial situation where they need to access these retirement dollars earlier than planned. We want to jump ahead. Bo's going to touch on some of the Department of Labor guides available here.
Yeah, so throughout this presentation we talked a lot about the fiduciary, the responsibilities, who they are. A lot of that information was obtained from the Department of Labor. I mean, they're the ones that are setting these guidelines, so obviously they should have some resources available to help guide us. The first booklet you see there, Meeting Your Fiduciary Responsibilities, I mean, that is in black and white what you should be doing. That's, starting, establishing your company's retirement plan, maintaining it over time, what changes, the list of questions that should be all located right there in that document. And then directly next to that is the automatic enrollment for 401k plans for small businesses. And that's, again, goes into the deeper detail about, the potential benefits of including that into your plan. There are some specific restrictions that need to be in place to have that feature included in your plan, and those are all outlined there. So you can take your cell phone camera, you can scan that little QR code, and it'll take you right directly to the web page where those documents were obtained. So as we conclude here today, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Scott. We'll bring him back in so he can kind of wrap things up here for us, and we'll let everybody get about their day.
All right, thanks, Bo. Thanks, Aaron, for sharing all of that. In addition to the resources that Bo just pointed out that you have access to, There are a couple of other resources put out by a group called FI360, which is an organization that we lean on for understanding what's expected of fiduciaries and how do you document it. Couple of things that I think may be of interest to some people listening today. One is called Fiduciary Responsibility Guide, and that is built around helping ERISA decision makers understand their fiduciary responsibilities, reviewing how well you're meeting those responsibilities, looking at the industry best practices, and for those who need to form a committee around this, helping to give some guidance on how to form an investment committee inside your own company. And the second is a tool called Investment Education Guide, and that's built around looking at how do you monitor your plan assets, what is an investment policy statement, what should it contain, and how can it help you avoid liability. So if you'd be interested in either one of those tools, I would suggest you let Doug Jenkins know. He can pass your information along and we can send those your way. Or if you're watching this after the fact, I would suggest you email Aaron Zylka, EZYLKA, at resoluteadvisor.com, or go to our website. We do have a contact us page at www.resoluteadvisor.com. That wraps up our presentation. Now we'd like to open it up for questions if anyone has any.
Well, first, thank you for all the information. That's a lot of information on this whole process and everything that people need to know on it. So do appreciate that. If you have any questions right now, go ahead and put those in the question box or the chat box. I'll get to those. I'll try and get the ball rolling here, though. What about, so you have your 401k plan, you have your retirement plans for your company. What should the fiduciary be doing to relay that information to the company's employees or people who are enrolled in the plan?
Aaron or Bo, you want to?
That's a good question. So typically, I'll go ahead and take this. Typically, many of the retirement plan sponsors that we work with, they host regular meetings with their employees, plan benefit meetings. Usually it covers not only retirement, but also healthcare, and they cover all topics at one time. And often they'll bring us in for these meetings so that we can have just a few quick minutes to let them know, let the employees know, we're available as a resource. Here's what's going on with your retirement plan, making sure they have the handouts or emails sent out and available to them so they know if they're eligible, when they become eligible, and then how they can contact us. And a lot of times our employers, the employers that we work with and the plan sponsors that we work with are very proactive in making sure that they are tracking when employees become eligible, they're connecting those employees with us, they're sending out any education pieces that we're providing them on a regular basis. I would say, and I think Bo and Scott would agree, the retirement plans that we work with, they're all very, very good at this and making sure that their employees have the information available and then continue to have access to us as a resource as well if they have questions. So
I would add to that, you know, this is a role that Bo fills very well for us. It's getting out and just being face-to-face at our companies and, you know, understanding, and it can be a challenge for companies to know that they've got to allow employees to carve time out of their workday. But when we're able to just set up, allow people to come in and speak one-on-one, we really believe that if we can help them navigate the tools so that they can make smart decisions about their money, that you know, it can go a long, long way. And we put a lot of value in that. Sometimes when we start talking about all the fiduciary things, you know, we are focused a lot on documentation, but what really matters is, are we making an impact for the employees and the participants? It's their retirement. How do you help that be successful? And that's really where the rubber hits the road.
Along the same line, we'll let you go after this one, but along the same lines, how important is it to try and educate a company's employees about just sort of the ins and outs of this whole process? You know, certainly the stock market's been a little up and down as of late. And I mean, if you go back to 2008, look at your 401k statement as it came in each quarter. It was borderline terrifying, but largely has rebounded and then some, in a short amount of time. If you're not really into the weeds on this whole process, how important is it for companies or the fiduciary of a company to relay that information and to educate their employees on kind of how this works?
Bo, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think, it seems, when I go to any company to sit and meet with these people, I meet all different walks of life, everybody in different stages of, some are just starting, some are getting ready to cash out and retire, and everything in between. So I think, like Scott said, making sure that you're carving out time that these employees can sit down and have these conversations, with us and go into those more in-depth conversations about what they're saving for, what's important to them, what ultimately their goals are. And I would say that those services are pretty well supported by the custodians that we work with. I would say most custodians out there have a vested interest in helping to provide that additional guidance as well. So the resources are available out there. As the employer, just make sure that you're continuing to reinforce the value that can be behind your company's retirement plan, not only for today, but obviously to help those employees retire eventually. So, just being upfront and keeping it front of mind, especially at least once a year, it seems that we try to touch base with our companies and sit down with the employees and go through that process. So, yeah.
I would add to that too, Doug. I think it is very important. Obviously, I think in the business that we're in, we're all going to say it's very important to know how this stuff works. But we do have, like Bo said, we meet with participants from every stage of the planning process. And some people really like getting in deep into the weeds as far as what's going on economically and what's going on in the market and how it's affecting them in their retirement plan. And other people just want highlights. Let me know when I get my statement once a quarter. I want to take a look at it. I hope I made money. If I didn't, I'm going to throw the envelope aside. So we do have those conversations. Like Bo said, he's very good at making sure that we're kind of customizing those conversations to each participant or employee that we're meeting with, but making sure as an employer that your participants, your employees know how to access this more in-depth and detailed information and the tools that are available, like Bo said and Scott said, provided by the custodian. There's a lot of resources and education tools from pretty much any retirement plan custodian out there. So just making sure that they know how to access that information, and then as we're meeting with them one-on-one, we can determine how interested they are in really getting into the weeds, but still making sure that their selection process for their investments and their retirement plan actually meet their objectives for the long term as well.
All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other questions. Again, I want to thank everybody for their time and taking part in this small business workshop here today. And we will be posting this entire webinar in its entirety on our YouTube channel. And do want to remind you to go ahead and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. We just posted another video yesterday talking to a marketing firm out of the Baltimore area just about what advertising and marketing looks like in 2020. So you can imagine it's a little bit different than it was in 2019. So we have about an 11-minute interview there. Check out too. A lot of good information. We're going to keep posting that on our YouTube channel, and of course using Facebook Live to talk to our members and everything as we continue to navigate through 2020. Again, thanks to Resolute Wealth Advisor for their information today. And if you have any questions after this, feel free to shoot me an email. I'll get you in touch with Bo, Aaron, or Scott, and we'll get you taken care of that way. But until then, I think our next event is actually the golf outing, and we have about 6 teams left open. So be sure to go to our website, FindlayHancockChamber.com, and get signed up for that if you haven't already. And beyond that, everybody have a great day.
Thank you very much.
See you guys.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.